AWANI tonight with me, Cynthia Ng. Singapore court delays execution of Nagaenthran, and keeping the spotlight on COVID, is Malaysia fully ready to transition to the endemic phase? That's coming up. Singapore's Court of Appeal has extended a stay of execution to Nagaenthran Damalingam after he was tested positive for COVID-19. The Malaysian was set to be hanged in Changi Prison on Wednesday morning, but it was put on hold after a last resort appeal was lodged. The Court of Appeal was due to hear the challenge today. 33-year-old Nagaenthran has been on death row for 11 years. He was found guilty in 2010 for trying to smuggle heroin into Singapore from Malaysia. He was sentenced to death despite an assessment by a medical expert that he has an IQ of 69, a level recognized as an intellectual disability. But the Singapore government said he was found to have clearly understood the nature of his acts. Nagaenthran's sentencing has been widely condemned by international groups who argue that executing a mentally ill person is prohibited under international human rights law. Judge Andrew Pang adjourned the hearing to a date yet to be fixed and issued a stay of the execution until proceedings are concluded. Nagaenthran's case has put Singapore and Malaysia's zero-tolerance laws on drug back under scrutiny. It has also raised questions about any criminal justice system which still uses the death penalty. Tonight on Consider This, we speak to our guests on these issues as we await the final verdict. The Health Ministry acknowledges the use of cannabis for medicinal purposes in Malaysia. Minister Khairy Jamaluddin said the import and use of medicinal marijuana products are allowed in Malaysia if they comply with existing laws.
The existing laws that regulate cannabis and its byproducts in Malaysia, including the Dangerous Drugs Act 1952, Poisons Act 1952 and the Sale of Drugs Act 1952 do not prohibit the use of cannabis for medicinal purposes. All products containing cannabis, he said, must be registered with the Drug Control Authority, and importers of the products must also have a license and import permit. Selling can only be carried out by a registered medical practitioner or pharmacist. Khairy said that in a written parliamentary reply to Muar MP Syed Saddiq, who seek clarification on Malaysia's position on the use of hemp or medical marijuana as an alternative medicine. In October, Syed Saddiq, along with 8 other MPs, agreed to form a special committee to study the medical uses of cannabis and the local ketum plant.
The Health Ministry is working out the number of medical officers to be appointed on a permanent basis. Minister Khairy Jamaluddin said 4,186 officers had been evaluated and could be recommended to the Public Service Department for permanent appointment.
Jumlah yang diperlukan untuk tahun depan, permohonan 4,186 perjawatan pelantikan tetap yang meliputi 3,586 pegawai perubatan, 300 pegawai pergigian, 300 pegawai farmasi adalah 370,485,089 ringgit.
Meanwhile, Khairy said the government via Budget 2022 had agreed to continue the contract appointment of 10,583 medical, dental and pharmaceutical officers, involving an allocation of more than 336 million ringgit. He said that 100 million ringgit in sponsorship for specialist programs benefiting 3,000 medical and dental contract officers would also be provided. Khairy said that a special committee had been set up to find a long-term solution to the issue of contract appointment. He added that his ministry and the Public Service Department are also looking to amend the Pension Act to offer permanent and more sustainable appointments to the group through the EPF scheme. The Human Resources Ministry is looking into the need for a law specifically to regulate gig workers and to protect their welfare. Its Minister, Datuk Sri M. Saravanan, said so far gig workers only receive social protection via SOCSO, but they are not covered by the Employment Act 1955. He said the ministry will also study the development in the UK whereby gig workers are eligible for employment rights and whether it can be applied or adapted to regulate gig workers in Malaysia. The group is not included under the definition of a worker under the Employment Act and the Labour Ordinances of Sabah and Sarawak. Deputy Human Resources Minister Dato' Awang Hashim told the Dewan Rakyat on Monday that so far there was no filing of labour cases regarding this group that could be used as a benchmark that would allow them to enjoy similar benefits as workers as defined under the country's labour law. DAP's Anthony Loke stressed that the party wants Amanah's Adli Zahari to be the Pakatan Harapan's choice as Chief Minister if the coalition wins the Melaka state election. He also insisted today against working with former UMNO defectors in the Melaka State Assembly.
Walaupun kita tidak bersetuju dengan pencalonan dua calon tersebut, tetapi kita tetap mahu memenangkan Pakatan Harapan. Dan fokus DAP ialah kita nak pastikan 8 kursi yang kita bertanding, kita boleh mencapai kemenangan dan menyumbang 8 kursi ini kepada Pakatan Harapan. Dan sekiranya Pakatan Harapan berjaya membentuk kerajaan negeri, pendirian DAP ialah menyokong saudara Adli Zahari sebagai Ketua Menteri Melaka.
On Saturday, opposition leader Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim announced that Datuk Sri Idris Harun and Datuk Nur Azman Hassan, both formerly UMNO assemblymen, would be contesting under the PH banner in the Melaka state election. Loke also noted that there is some discomfort among local DAP members in Melaka, but party leaders have explained that a larger objective remains at play. We will go for a quick break. Stay with us.
Ayuh keluarga Malaysia, kita bulatkan tekad dan bersatu hati untuk terus memelihara serta mempertahankan kedaulatan negara. Sebagai keluarga Malaysia yang besar, kita harus bertoleransi dalam semua perkara. Hormat menghormati serta mengekalkan perpaduan rakyat yang berbilang kaum, agama dan bangsa serta integrasi nasional silang budaya adalah tunjang kekuatan kita sebagai sebuah negara bangsa yang berjaya. Umpama selembar benang dikait, ditenun dan dijalin, akhirnya menjadi kain yang sempurna indah.
Welcome back. Malaysia is not fully ready to transition to the endemic phase of COVID-19. The Parliament's Health, Science and Innovation Committee believes that there are certain parameters that should be met first before transitioning from pandemic to endemic safely and sustainably. We speak to its chairman, Dr. Kelvin Yee, on what to look out for.
I think in order for us to transition fully and safely to endemicity, I think there are a few parameters that we need to observe, and especially to ensure that the rate of active cases are not too high and that it burdens the public healthcare system. So I think there are some major health parameters that we observe. For example, the infection rate per 100,000. I think currently we're at 1.8 per 100,000. I think a good target will be 1.5 per 100,000. Or even hospitalization, hospital capacity, especially for hospitalization for Cat 3 and Cat 2, Cat 5 patients, backlog of non-COVID-19 cases in hospitals. I think currently we have about 57,000, which is a lot of backlog cases. and of course ICU rates. In Malaysia right now, I think ICU is about 66% overall. I think a good rate to look at would be about 30% or below before we transition. So you see, all these health parameters, health capacity has to be monitored, and the trend has to be looked at, especially now in view of the lessening of the restrictions, inter-districts, interstate travels. And once the parameters I mentioned is achieved, only then we are safe to transition safely and also sustainably, so that we do not open up, then close down again, and so on and so forth, which comes at a very huge economic cost.
Increasing our public health capacity is one of the necessary steps to take for the country to fully transition to living with COVID-19 as an endemic disease. Dr. Kelvin Yee outlines measures the government can explore.
I think number one is all parties must be involved. This has to be a whole of government, whole of nation approach. We made that mistake in the past years, which lead to, the whole pandemic going out of control. And the government must learn from that mistake to involve all. I think the second one is basically, as I mentioned just now, increase public health capacity to make sure that FTTIS is integrated with technology, to make sure it's efficient, increasing ICU capacities, and of course, having a comprehensive national testing strategy, which is very, very important for this transition. And for this national testing strategy to happen, of course, two main things has to happen. The self-test kits prices have to come down significantly. And number two, the government must find ways to incentivize people to report their test results on MySejahtera, even if it's negative. The third issue is, of course, integration of technology to improve MySejahtera, which is supposed to be our main hotspot identification, contact tracing, notifications, even home quarantine monitoring, to make sure there's speed and scale and equity principle of it. And of course, number four is basically strategic communications to the public, to make sure public understands what it means to live with endemicity and to build up a strong public social responsibility, which is important during endemic COVID-19.
Beginning November 22nd, recipients of China's Sinovac and Sinopharm vaccines, as well as India's Covaxin vaccine, will be allowed to travel to the United Kingdom. No pre-departure test, day 8 testing, or quarantine upon arrival will be needed.
Passengers, however, would need to purchase and take a lateral flow test before the end of their second day post-arrival. The UK government said the newly added vaccines fall under the World Health Organization's emergency use listing, which it now recognises. While the UK welcomes fully vaccinated individuals in over 135 countries and territories, the new ruling would benefit more people from countries such as the United Arab Emirates, Malaysia and India.
Thousands of demonstrators marched towards the New Zealand Parliament to protest against COVID-19 restrictions. About 3,000 people, most not wearing masks, made their way through Wellington, prompting major police deployment not often seen in New Zealand. While the demonstration was peaceful, people were seen holding signs and shouting slogans, demanding the government roll back compulsory COVID-19 vaccination and lift restrictions. Last month, the government mandated teachers and health workers to be fully vaccinated. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has promised to end restrictions only after 90% of the population is inoculated. That threshold is higher than many other countries and has invited criticism from people calling for more freedom. New Zealand's double-dose vaccination rate had reached nearly 80%. The country still has among the lowest COVID-19 cases in the world, with under 8,000 cases reported so far and 32 deaths. That is all we have for you on AWANI tonight. Get the latest news updates on COVID-19 and COVID-19 vaccines from astroawani.com and Astro AWANI app. I'm Cynthia Ng. Thank you for watching.